So let's talk about immediate Google Drive. Now, again, this is the second portion of our Google Drive training. We've already talked about the basics last week. Next week, we'll be diving into the advanced Google Drive, which we will dive more into Google Drive for desktop, application launcher, and how to use both of those tools and how we use the Chrome web interface and tie all this training together. So this is going to focus on some other topics, not so much Google Drive for desktop, but this will prepare you for the advanced Google Drive. So we break this down in 3 sections to not overwhelm you with information, but just give you tidbits of information regarding Google Drive and then become an advanced Google Drive user next week. So with that, let's dive into it. What are our objectives today? Objective 1, we're going to learn about priority and workspaces that is available in the Google Chrome web interface. We're going to talk about what is priority and what is workspace. I also want to give you a friendly reminder on this slide deck, if you are on it, or for future, if you're watching this video at a later time, anytime you see a blue button down here, I'm going to get my laser pointer here in a minute. Anytime you see a blue button, that is a hyperlink to take you to more additional resources. So if you wanted to learn more about priority, you could just click on the blue button and it will take you to probably a Google Help resource for you. If what the information I give you is not enough or you want to learn more, feel free to always check out the blue buttons on each slide if there is one that applies. So what is priority and workspace? In Google Drive, there is a priority page. You'll notice you have priority, my drive. Some of you might have a shared drive, and then you have shared with me, recent, star, trash, and so on. The priority page is at the very top, right above my drive. Think of it as a space that allows you to have a combination of both suggestions that Google will give you, the documents that you might be working on, something that might need action, something that was recently edited. And then you have another section on that priority that's called Workspaces. And we're going to dive into this a little bit more, but that is where I'm referring to, is that little priority button at the very top in your My Drive. It's right above your My Drive. And we're going to talk about priority page here in a minute. The other objective is understanding file types in Google Drive. This is probably maybe the main reason why you're here today, is how do we work with Microsoft Office products? What are Microsoft Office products? Most of you know what those are, but what are Google Workspace doc editors, and how do you really work with them together? That's really maybe why you're here, and that's what we're going to dive into in Objective 2. Objective 2 talks about what are Microsoft Office products. I know this is kind of a joke of in a slide. We all know what Microsoft Word is. We know what Microsoft Excel is, and we know what PowerPoint is. I kind of want to point out some visual indicators. Microsoft Word has a big W. Excel has an X. And PowerPoint has a P. Okay? Pointing that out for a reason. Microsoft Word is blue, Excel is green, and PowerPoint is orange. Okay? There's a reason why I'm pointing that out. Pretty self-explanatory. We know that Microsoft Word and Excel or PowerPoint are apps that work within Microsoft Office. What are Google Doc editors? Well, we have Google Docs. This is a Word editor, very similar to Word, right? We have Sheets, very similar to Microsoft Excel. And we have Slides, very similar to PowerPoint. Notice the icons. This is a Doc, Google Doc icon. This is a Sheet icon, and this is a Slide icon. And I mentioned the colors for a reason. Blue, green, and semi-orange, right? Okay, so we know what Google Doc editors are part of the Google Workspace environment, and Word and Excel and PowerPoint are part of the Microsoft environment. So what can you do with Microsoft Office files? That's correct. You can open Microsoft Word in Google Docs. You can open a Microsoft Office Excel in Google Sheets, and you can open up a Microsoft PowerPoint in Google Slides. They are the corresponding apps within Google Workspace. So really what that means is in the Chrome Drive web interface, where you go to Google Drive, on your Chrome browser, you can open a Microsoft Word in Google Docs. It will not convert it to a Google Doc. It is the exact same file. Same thing applies in Microsoft Excel. You can open it with the corresponding app. In this case, in Chrome, in Google Drive, is Google Sheets. and obviously the same for PowerPoint. It's important that you know that. Why is this important? You may have users that love their Microsoft Word for a resume or for an invoice or fill in the blank. They like their particular Microsoft Word, Excel, or PowerPoint. But you love your Google Drive. You love to collaborate. They have shared that Microsoft Word file with you. The beauty is you can actually collaborate on that document in the Google Doc editors. So that's really a powerful tool. It is meaning that Google and Office are becoming frenemies, right? They're not besties. They're not best friends, right? But they are working together and trying to be more interoperable within each other. So it's important to know that. We're going to practice on that quite a bit today. The other one is objective 3, and I'm going to kind of skim through this pretty fast because it's kind of repeating exactly what we're going to do, but also it's kind of self-explanatory. We've been using Google for quite some time now. Sharing, we know it, but maybe you just don't know some of the little ways to restrict, how to remove, propagating. We're just going to kind of skim through this objective 3 part of the slide deck. So understanding sharing options. You have 3 options you can do by sharing a file or a folder. You have option 1. You can share it with anyone with the link access. Either anyone with the link access, anyone with the link access, meaning they do not have to have a Google account to see it. Okay? So that means great for websites, great for people that don't work within the state of Iowa under a Google account. They do not have to have a Google account to view whatever document you decide to share or folder with anyone with the link access. Option 2 is state of Iowa. What does that mean? They have to have a Google account, 1, and they have to be a state of Iowa Google Workspace user. Okay, so you have that option. Then you have option 3, specific people. You're sharing it to one particular person. Okay, so that's another way of looking at it, or a group of people in a Google group environment. So it's a way to distribute either anyone with a link access, state of Iowa access, or people, specific people. Okay. So as for sharing files or folder, like I said, you can do either by specific people or person or anyone with a link to a file or folder. Pretty self-explanatory, just pretty much a repeat of what I just kind of said. Let's talk about folders. Folders are slightly different than files, not much, but a little bit. You can share a folder to, let's just pick a person. Let's say I share a folder to Jolene. I can give Jolene viewer rights, commenter rights, or editor rights. Now, viewer is pretty self-explanatory. They only can view the file, right? They only can see the file, okay? You can give them capability of downloading it as a viewer, okay? Commenter has to be able to obviously view the file. Otherwise, what's the purpose of commenting, right? That's pretty self-explanatory. But they can make comments on the file, like, hey, I don't understand what you mean by this, right? An editor can open, edit, add, delete, and move any files and folders, right? So as an editor, they can adjust the infrastructure of the folder. That's important to know. And they can share the folder as well, okay? And they can edit the files inside there, okay? So the key that's really different between files and folders is folder people, when you give them edit rights, can usually organize the infrastructure, okay? That's important to realize that you're doing that, okay? So let's move on. If you have a really big folder infrastructure with tons of files, tons of folders, it may or may not, depending on how big it is, and there's no exact line that I know of, but it might take a while to share or unshare folders. It might take a while to change those permissions, okay? So it might not propagate down as fast as you assume it will in the display portion. If someone tried to grant access, it will be fine, but maybe it doesn't show in all these subfolders as well, okay? So allow a little time, a little grace when it comes to a large amount of changing of permissions, okay? So let's give an example of sharing a folder to a specific person. So in this example, you can see that I'm sharing a folder to Jolene. I can give her viewer, commenter, editor rights. Now, again, in the folder option, you have the option to organize, add, and edit files. Okay, so this tells you who you're sharing it to. This tells you What permissions are you going to give them? You have this little button that says notify. I'm going to talk about this one just for a little bit. I sometimes, most of the time actually, don't notify them when I share it, because I will like create the infrastructure, get the stuff that I want done. Now I'm ready to share it to them. And I will actually either give them a link to that folder infrastructure. Hey, check this out. Okay. But it's up to you. Just notice if you do have it checked, you are going to then, in this case, Jolene would receive an email that this folder is being shared to her. Okay. But if you uncheck it, she's not going to receive that. But where is it going to go? Yes, in that famous shared with me concept. It's going to go there either way, but she's not going to be notified. You still would want to do best practice and say, hey, Jolene, I've been working on project A. Here's the folder to project A. I need your help to collaborate. I need your two heads are better than one concept. Okay. This also tells you what you're actually sharing, so they can see the folder that I'm sharing. In this example is test as the name of the folder. So you know exactly what you're sharing. And then last, hit send. Okay. So that's your option when you share a folder in the sense of a specific person. Sharing folders by link. So you have the option to and or both. You could share to specific people, like I could share to Jolene and share it to her, but now I want to grant access at the link level as well, or just do it via link, your choice. You can get a link when you go to the share button. You can share with the state of Iowa. It defaults to share with state of Iowa because it's just a security measure. That's the first round. But if you wanted to, you'll notice in the drop down, you do have the option if anyone wants the link access. So you have state of Iowa, which they have to have a Google account, right? And they have to be in the state of Iowa. That's an and sentence for a reason. Google account and state of Iowa Google Workspace user, okay? Anyone with a link, all that means is that they do not have to have a Google account. All they need is the link to that particular folder to have access to it. Okay, so you do have that option as well. When sharing folders, so let's think of folder A, and you have subfolder A, subfolder B, document A, document B. Okay, you've got a big infrastructure of a folder. If you decide to share folder A, those permissions are going to propagate down. They're going to cascade down to all the subfolders and files underneath there. So whatever permissions you gave in folder A, it's going to streamline down and go to everything underneath. Okay, so it's important to realize that. You can see in this example, I shared this training folder to trainer 1. Okay, so this document that's in that folder, as you can see here in that training folder, also was granted trainer 1 has access. So it automatically goes down. Now that you know that it goes down and it propagates down, cascades down, then you can adjust individually inside those folders. Let's say, for example, if I didn't want trainer 1 to have access to this demo document, I could remove trainer 1 and she would have access to the entire folder infrastructure except demo 1 file. Okay, we're going to practice this later, but know that you can set granular permissions, okay, inside my drive. Okay, so you can make individual or granular permissions, whatever vocab you want to use. But it's very important that you understand that the permissions do go down. Some other things that you need to be aware of when sharing folders, and this is very few people realize this, so it's kind of important. This is maybe something you will learn from today if you're not sharing in the past, is when you do share specific people, you'll notice up at the top you have a gear, and many people do not look at that gear. In that gear gives you the option to adjust your permissions. So in this case, Jolene, I am providing her editor rights, giving her rights to edit the document. I may not want Jolene to be a full editor in the sense of being able to change permissions and share that folder to trainer 1, to John, to Chad. I don't want her to share this. I want to restrict that. As an owner, I can do that. So and by default, Jolene, by default, by sharing to a certain person, will always provide them editor rights to also change permissions and share. But if you have a file that you just really don't want any editor to share to anybody else, only you want to share it to them, to anybody, you might want to go to that gear and uncheck that, okay? And then you, as the owner of that file, or that folder, then, folder, can allow yourself to only share, okay? So you have an option here. Many people don't know about that, okay? But be careful in doing that too, okay? So you just have to know what your purpose is and why you want to do that. Let's change hats. Let's change gears just slightly here. Let's talk about files. We're talking about files. This could be any file. This could be a PDF. It could be a Microsoft Office file. It could be a Google Doc editor, a file inside Google Drive, okay? Same thing, viewer, commenter, edit, okay? Obviously, we've already kind of went over that, right? Same concept, right? So if you're sharing a file, same thing, viewer, commenter, editor. This is where I'm going to go a little bit faster. So this is the same thing that we just talked about, right? Same thing. There's the document. You could notify, you hit send. What permissions do you want them to have? You hit send at the file level. Now, at the file level, you do have something slightly different in that gear, okay? In that gear that we talked about, many people don't check out, is in there, you do have the option to share with people settings. So in this case, trainer one, do I want trainer one to be able to share? We've already talked about that. Same concept as the folders, right? But what about viewers? Do I want viewers to be able to download, print, and copy? Maybe you don't, okay? So these are turned on by default. If you want to enable those features, you uncheck it, okay? So again, if you want to look at a document that you have edit rights, you could see or own, you could look at the gear, edit documents that you own, you can look at the gear and you'll see these same options here, okay? Moving on, what about sharing files as a link? So as I mentioned, you can share files by link. You can do State of Iowa or any link access, okay? You have the same concept as you do in folders. State of Iowa or anyone with the link. Now, with sharing files, limit how files are shared. You do have a separate gear when you share to State of Iowa. So anyone in this group, meaning the State of Iowa, notice when you're in State of Iowa, it gives you like a building, right? That gives you kind of a visual indicator that it is a building, meaning a group of users. Anyone in the State of Iowa has a Google Workspaces account. You do have an additional setting. By default, it is unchecked. What this unchecked setting is people in the State of Iowa can search for this file. I wouldn't have that ever really turned on, okay? Because really, in our consideration, in our environment, we have our agency level, right? So it might apply to DNR, but really not to IUB, right? It might not apply. So really, I wouldn't probably have this checked for any reason, unless it's a statewide Google resource, okay? So just know that that's there, and make sure that if anything that you don't want people to be able to search for, because if that document has that checked, I could search for that file inside my Google account, okay? So make sure that's unchecked for most cases. So how do you restrict or change settings or stop or change sharing, I should say? You can, if you want to stop, let's say I no longer want Jolene to be part of a document, you would just go and select a Jolene in your sharing and click remove. If I no longer want this file or folder to be linked sharing, I would just select restricted, okay? So those are the two ways to stop sharing. If I want to change sharing on a specific user or a certain user, I would then just click on that user that I want to find and select the drop downs. You then could change it to editor to viewer, viewer to editor, give temporary access, change it to commenter. You can adjust it at the person level. Same thing. You actually can change the link sharing to anyone with the link access and edit rights. Did you know that? or you can do anyone with a group, state of Iowa, to view right or edit rights or commenter rights. You can change those options when you're sharing. It's not just anyone with a link view access, right? You can actually make anyone with a link access as an editor. I do that with my family. Not everybody's on a Google, and I'll share them the link, and I need them to edit that document. So this is an example. You can see if I want trainer 1 to no longer be an editor, I can change it to viewer, commenter. I could give temporary access. I can make her the owner if I wanted to change ownership altogether, or I can remove her. Same concept there. But to actually stop sharing to trainer 1, I would select remove. If I wanted to stop sharing at the get link or anyone the link access or state of Iowa, I would need to select restricted. Okay, restricted mean anybody up here in the share with people. It means in this case, if I select restricted, trainer 1, who's up here in the second box, would still have access, but now the state of Iowa no longer has access as a view link. Same concept, repeating, I just kind of did, but at the specific person, certain person, you can change it to viewer, commenter, give temporary access, and so much more. So I just wanted to point out, this is where you're changing a link access. And I know this is kind of repeating, so I'm trying to go through it kind of fast and dive into the demo portion. But you can kind of see, like, if I was going to share with the state of Iowa access, I could choose anyone with the link access. But don't forget, though, by default, many of us will do view only. You can actually change it to editor or commenter. Okay, so you do have that option when you're changing sharing at the link access. And the last objective, again, I provide the slide deck to give you screenshots to help users, also with the resources as well. So we're going to dive into sharing. Most of you know how to share by now, but we also just want to make sure you know the propagating of the permissions and so on. Objective 4 is advanced search tips. We've talked about this a little bit in the basics, and we practiced some of this already, but I think this is still a very useful objective to go over again, but also put it in place again in our demo. We can right click and search within a folder. You can use the search box. You can use search operators, and I needed to add another one there. We do now have the search chips. That is what we have available for us. Let's just break it down. Did you know you can right click on a folder and you can choose search within, fill in that blank, put that folder that you selected, you're able to search within that folder. Some of us, I know, like DPH has huge folder infrastructures, and many of you have already done a great job organizing those folders. So if you select that folder, knowing that evaluation is in that folder, you can right click on that folder, narrow the search down, search in the person that you're evaluating, and you really narrowed your search down a lot because your My Drive is big, full, lots of information, but I know it's going to be in this folder infrastructure. I've really refined my search, okay? We also need to remember when searching within Google Drive Chrome web interface, you're not only searching the title of the document, you're searching the entire document in itself, right? So it indexes all the information, even in a PDF. It has what we call optical character recognition. So it can read the entire document in the sense of contextual and trying to do the indexing, okay? So keep that in mind as you're doing it. The drop down, which is the search box that we have in Google Drive, which we have in Gmail and Calendar, we have to know about the drop down capability within Google Workspace. You do not need to be a search operator expert and be like this advanced search person. You really honestly just need to fill out the box. What type of file are you looking for? What name is it? What are you looking for in details and location if you want to narrow it down? So you can fill out those fields in the search box to help refine your search. If you want to get fancy and learn some search operators, there are some here for you. There's even more that's displayed on this particular slide. That is why I gave you this tips and tricks. Or you can just Google advanced search tips or search operators within Google Drive, and you can learn some of those other ones as well, if you like search operators. Some of us do, some of us don't. I go back and forth. With that, though, recently in the last 2 or 3 months, if not sooner or sooner than that, actually, or recent, I should say, we have the capability of using search chips within Google Drive. Actually, the Google user group got a sneak peek of it. We've been using it for 6 months. and testing it out in the beta program. But now it is out here for all of you to use. You have the capability of using search chips. This is very similar that we have available inside of Gmail. So this really can help narrow your search down when you're looking for something. It gives you that kind of the capability of kind of seeing what you have and then manipulate the search as you go through it. So you can just type in a keyword in the search box, and then you will have the capability of refining your search. I really like the search chips. So now as I went through and I said, that's kind of a really boring slide. Believe me, I think it is as well. So you're not alone in that, and no hard feelings if you did not like it, because it's not my favorite either. So with that, we are going to dive into the live portion, the live demo portion, and we're just going to hit those objectives in numeric order and chronological order. The first objective that we're going to talk about is priority and workspaces. So first thing we need to do is find our priority page inside our Google Drive. So as I mentioned in the slide deck, priority is right above my drive. So priority is right above my drive. So I'm going to go ahead and click on priority. It's again right above my drive. You'll notice I kind of already have a few things going here. Let's look and see what I have here. Up here at the top, I have some what we call commonly used, recently used, things that you've been in. This is going to look totally different than what yours is, right? I don't know what you've been working on, what projects you're working on, what documents you're working on, but Google is using its artificial intelligence to help determine what they think that you should be working on or recently been on. You'll notice there's quite a bit of stuff up here. It's just a great way for you to find those files quickly, right? Sometimes it might be something that's been edited recently. It might be something that you need to take action on, okay? Consider this like a shortcut page in a sense. This is where, if these are your most working documents, we all have different jobs, right? If I would go back in my previous life as an AD secretary, I worked on the same documents almost every day. I had a phone directory I needed to be on every day. I had rosters that I was working on all the time. Like my job was kind of repeat and rinse. And so those same documents, I would have loved to have something like this because I would have just had all these little workspace. I would have named it football, whatever the case may be, little workspace items here for you. Okay, that's what this is. It's like what maybe you're a project manager. Project A would have this, project B would have this. It's like categories that apply to you, different hats that we seem to wear within our life, right? So that's kind of why you might want to try priority if you do have multiple hats, or you always are working on the same documents all the time. And it's just a quick way to find those obviously priority documents in a quick way. So now that we have know that these are just kind of artificial intelligence documents that Google thinks that are important, what about the ones that you think are important? So over here underneath that, you have what we call workspaces, and it's just really a collective space of documents that you like, okay? So let's go ahead and create one so you can see how this works. So in this particular trainer account, I do not have one, but I do have this button that says create a workspace. So my life is Google, right? My life, my hat is Google Help, right? I'm always working on Google Help stuff. So I'm going to name my workspace, my hat, Google Help, if I spell it right, GoogleHelp-Iowa project. And I'm going to go ahead and click create. Now, what happens is a pop-up appears. In this workspace, this collective space, you can add up to 25 files. Some of you are like, oh, can I add a folder? No. Okay. It says files for a reason. Right now, at the current time, it's only links to a file. Now, when I link this file here, it does not change the location of the file. So think of it as a shortcut concept. It's just another way to access same file. If you remember from the previous training, remember Google doesn't want you to have multiple copies out there if not needed, right? This file can be in multiple locations because it's driven by the URL, right? So just remember that this is just another way to access the exact same file in a different location. So don't get hung up on that. This is not putting it in a different location. It's the same document. It's just another way of accessing it in this collective space. So I have a file that I want to add. So this is one of the many ways you can do it. I'm going to go ahead and click add file. And then it will let you search your Google Drive. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead up here. You have many ways. I could actually select it this way if I saw it, or in this case, I'm just going to hit the magnifying glass. And we know when we see the magnifying glass, it means we're searching, right? So I'm going to go ahead and search Google Help again. I could refine my search or use the filter option. I could choose file type. The one I'm looking for, I know, is a text document, which means it's either a Microsoft Word or a Google Doc. So I'm going to go ahead and select a doc type, text file type, and I want to choose a GoogleHelp-Iowa agenda. This is a great example of a working document that I'm working on at all times, right? An agenda comes up every time you have a meeting, right? So in this case, maybe I meet weekly with my Google team. True fact, I could always quickly find my agenda in my priority. So now I have GoogleHelp-Iowa agenda is one of the 25 files I have. Obviously, I'm not going to have you guys sit here and watch me add 25 files. You get the concept, right? So we can go over here, though. You do have 3 dots inside here. If you click on the 3 dots, when you hover over it, we know by now 3 dots gives you what? ... Google has more for you. And here are the options you can do. You could remove it from this workspace. Maybe this is project A, and this now needs to go to project B, and I need to put this file in project B. You can remove it. You can do all the similar things that you normally can do when you right-click, okay? So I'm not going to do that, but do know that you do have that capability, okay? I'm not going to add more files that way because maybe that's not how you function, right? We process differently. You could start a workspace, but what happens if you're like in the middle of a project and you're working in your My Drive and you're like, oh, I wish this was in my workspace. Let's go the reverse route, right? You're searching for something and because it's not in your workspace, you're trying to find it. So we're going to practice here a little search. I'm going to search up here and search for Google Help again because it is a Google Help. This time it's a list of my users. So I could do Google Help. I have quite a bit with the word keyword Google Help. You can see that. Well, let's use one of our search chips now. You'll notice then I know I'm looking for a sheet because it's a list of users. Usually list of users are in a Google Sheet format. I can go ahead and choose file type and select spreadsheets. Let's just see how much it narrows my search. I'm down to quite a few less search results now, aren't I? Okay. I have found that file that I knew the name of it, kind of knew what it had in the document. Now I want to add this to my workspace, the one that I just created. I can select it this way and right click, and you will see now I have the option to add to workspace here as well. So I'm right clicking on that file that I just selected, and I have the option to add it to the current workspace that I have, which is Google Help-Iowa project. But in case this was a brand new project, maybe project B, I could go ahead and create a new workspace here as well, and no need to go back to my priority. Okay, so I'm just going to cheat and just go ahead and go to Google Help-Iowa project. And now I should have how many files in my workspace in that new one that I just created? 2. Notice I have 2 right here. So now I have 2 out of 25. So you can go ahead and click View Workspace. You'll see the same screen we were just on earlier, okay? Notice, though, in case this is Project A and Project B and Project A is now done, maybe I'm done with the Google Help and now I'm going to the Microsoft world or whatever the case may be, I'm done with this project, I can actually hide it. Doesn't mean I have to remove it, I just have to hide it and I'll bring it back up when it comes back around, right? So again, you can click 3 dots, and notice you have the option to remove it. Again, we'll not remove the documents. We're just removing the space, right? We're just removing the space that we decided. This virtual space is all we're doing if we want to remove it. We're not deleting the files, okay? Or the location that they're originally stored at, okay? But we can hide it or we can rename it. Those 2 are pretty, let's go ahead and do hide workspace and see what happens. So let's pretend this project is A. I'm done with it and moving on. I'm going to go ahead and choose hide workspace. Now, what has happened is at the bottom here, you may not see it very well. Let me remove this little X. You'll notice that I have a hidden workspace. Maybe this project is coming back up. I need to then unhide it. Okay. You can have up to 8 workspaces. This is a question I was asked at one time, and I had to Google it because I did not know the answer. I hope it hasn't changed. So the last time I did it, you can have 8 workspaces if you choose to. So if you have 8 projects, you could do that. You can actually then just hide the one you're not using and go from there. Now, if you love this priority concept, you're like, oh my goodness, this is like the best thing since sliced bread, I got some great news for you. Notice when I go to Google Drive, let's just open a new tab. And most of us go to Google Drive from here, or if they've got it pinned or whatever the case may be. But watch where I go when I go to Google Drive. Watch the URL and watch the location. My default Google Drive is selecting my drive. That's my default homepage in Google Drive. Okay. You may recall in the beginning Google Drive training, I said some of you might be using priority, and you may want priority to be your homepage. So what you can do is actually, if you love this collective spacing concept, you can make this your default when you go to Google Drive. Now, if you are a Google Drive for desktop user, you're probably not a huge priority user, because priority is one of those things that does not appear in Google Drive for desktop. Okay. So if you are loving the Chrome web interface and you love the priority, you might want to change your settings to default to the priority as your home page. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to change that. That is in your settings. So you're going to go to the gear. Many of us know by now a gear is where you adjust your settings or preferences within an app. But if you scroll down, you will find the options under suggestions, make priority my default homepage. I'm going to go ahead and do so. Again, this is a customized option for whoever it might apply to. I'm going to go ahead and hit done. And I'm going to go ahead and just show you one more time now. When I go to Google Drive, watch what happens as my homepage. Originally, it was my drive. Now look where it landed. My collective workspace. This is where I go for most of my files. I don't know if that is you, but if that is you, that would be one less click. Isn't that what we're after all the time? Okay. So in a nutshell, that is understanding priority. It's been out for a while. I just don't know if it's something many of you like. It might be something you definitely want to give it a wholehearted try. Okay. And if you don't even know where to begin, you can see Google in this case has suggested a workspace for me. You could go ahead and just try what they have already suggested and see what happens. All righty. Objective 2, we're changing gears. Again, we're doing objective 2. We're going to talk about understanding file types in Google Drive. All righty. This is probably the favorite part of my training here. Is we're going to talk about file types in Google Drive. Now, what I have done to provide a decent demo is I have a folder that contains many different file types. Okay, let's look at the file types that we have in this folder. And how do we know what file type they are? Okay, so what I have here, I'll blow it up a little bit here. First one in my screen is I have a video. Okay, it's a video. It's an MP4 file. It's a video format. Okay. The next one is a Google Doc. How do I know it's a Google Doc? Because remember, I pointed out the Google Doc logo earlier. It's a Google Doc logo. Now, if I don't really know the logo, what would be another way to determine the file type, right? Remember the famous I that we talked about in the beginning Google Drive training? The I would also tell you the type of the folder. This is very similar to your right click in your File Explorer, right? It tells you the details of the file, okay? So you have 2 ways of determining what type of file it is, okay? The next one is a PowerPoint. How do you know that? Because it gives you the PowerPoint logo. Remember, the P means PowerPoint, right? So keep that in mind as well. And guess what? Google is indicating it in the I screen as a PowerPoint as well. Google Drawing is a Google Drawing. Many of you may not know what Google Drawing is. But if you can see in the thumbnail in the iScreen, it's given you something very similar to Paint, right? We know how to annotate on a document. You might have a screenshot. You might want to add an arrow. You might want to do a circle. It's a tool that we're going to talk about in the future. If you want to check out that, it is one of the best hidden gems inside Google. Julie and I both use it all the time. So Google Drawing is another thing that you may want to check out on your spare time. This one is a PDF. You can see that because it's got the PDF logo, PDF. It's also telling me that in the iScreen. Okay, are we getting this theme here? This is an Excel, it's an X, this is an image, a PNG, this is a JPEG, this is a Microsoft Word. How do I know it's a Word? A big W, okay? Slides and sheets. All right, now some of you are like, my screen doesn't look like that, obviously, when I'm looking at my files. I might be in what we talked about in the beginning, Google Drive Training. You may be in grid view. So let's just give you a quick snapshot of what it looks like in grid view versus list view. As you might recall, my favorite view is list view because that's the creature I am, the creature of habit. I like list view. But you may want to try grid view in certain cases. You can click on grid view and then you can see the entire snapshot thumbnail view of that particular area that you're looking at. Okay. All right. I'm going to go back to list view, but before I do that, I forgot. Then you can still see the same logos at the bottom of the thumbnail. Okay. Why I'm pointing this out is because we have some of us that are using our Microsoft Excel, some of us are using Google Sheets, some of us are using Word, etc. Right? We're all kind of doing what we want to do, which is we love power of choice, right? But we have to understand if you are working with that Microsoft Word user and they want your input, they want collaboration, what's the best way to do that? Well, if you're collaborating at the same time, the best way to do that is actually open up in the Chrome web interface. So let's actually do that. So inside here, you can see that this is a Microsoft Word. Now, maybe some of you are really hesitant to double click this because you're like, it's going to convert it to a Google Doc. I want you to know that it doesn't, okay? It used to, so you're not too far off, but it's been like this now for a long time, for a while, I didn't say a long time, for a while. It will keep it the original format. If you don't believe me, let's look at the instructions here. If you hover over the DOCX in a blue banner, it's telling you it's a Microsoft Word format. So now it is not creating a brand new, it's not converting it to a Google Doc. In theory, what it's doing, not theory, it is what it's doing is right-click in a concept, open with the corresponding app in Chrome, in this case, is Google Docs. So Microsoft Word, the corresponding app is Google Docs. Microsoft Excel, the corresponding app is, fill in the blank, Google Sheets. Yeah, I'm going to do it one more time. Microsoft PowerPoint, the corresponding app is Slides. Okay? It's not converting them. It's just allowing you to open it up. Okay? Now, there are times when you're working with Microsoft Office files, they may be really robust or maybe have tons of formulas or something's really just not going to be as compatible. This isn't a Google thing. Just think about it. Do apps always get along? Not so much, right? Sometimes when you open up a PDF, it might not work exactly the way if it was created in Word, right? We don't know, right? If you're opening with an app that's not this native app, you get some compatibility issues. Shocker, right? You can get that same compatibility issues when you are doing this, right? If you're opening up a Microsoft Word file in Google Docs, you may get a big banner, and I don't have an example of this, but you may get a banner up here that says, hey, wait a minute, not as compatible as I would like you to be. That's when you need to stop and make a conscious decision. You have today maybe take a different direction. You may lose some formatting. You may lose some formulas. I don't know, okay? It depends, but Google will even go one step further. When you get that pop-up up here, you're going to click on it and see what's not going to work anymore. Then you make the next conscious decision. What am I going to do? So I'm going to stop and I'm going to go open this now in the native app, which in this case would be Microsoft Word. Okay. All right. So you could go to Google Drive for desktop and open that file in the native app, Microsoft Word, and you're no longer going to have compatibility issues, right? Because it's the native app. You know that even when you switch from one Microsoft 6 to 8 to 10, you sometimes have compatibility issues because it's not the original app. This isn't like new to technology, right? So just kind of know that. So keep that in mind. If you do get a pop-up, stop and pause, watch the visual indicators, and make a conscious decision. What do I want to do? Now, on basic, normal, this is another example. This is a true Microsoft Word file. As a collaborator or the owner of the document, I can make changes to this document. Okay? It's not screwing it up. Okay? And I don't have to save because in Google Land, it automatically saves, right? So that's how it functions. So keep that in mind, okay? All righty. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. Let's just to give you another visual, this is a PowerPoint. I'm going to open this up. Opening it up, this is a PowerPoint. How do I know that? Because I had the letter P earlier, and it's given me the banner up here. That says it's a PowerPoint. So it says it's a PowerPoint, but I get to use the corresponding app. In this case, yes, remember Google Slides. So I can make adjustments here and make it 2022 and so much more. Okay. So you have that collaboration. So if you've got a user that says, I really want you to collaborate on my PowerPoint, don't send it as an attachment. That's going to do yourself a disservice, right? Because then if you send it as an attachment, they download it, then they've already made 6 updates before you even see it, right? Get it in Google Drive, make adjustments. If you're a communications director and they love their PowerPoint, fine, right? But get it in Google Drive so you can at least update the communications, the grammar, get it the way that you want, okay? So you can use Microsoft Office files in Google Drive web interface. All right, and it's not going to convert them. Again, they're not besties, they're not best friends, but they can be friend enemies, and they can work pretty well together, okay? And if they can't work well together, Google's going to tell you stop and look at what's not going to work. Do you want to move forward, or do you want to go back and open up in the original app, which in this case would be Word, Excel, or PowerPoint, okay? Now, not only that, the other thing you can do, let's talk about non-Office files, such as PDFs. So let's look at this PDF file right here. Oh, that's nice. It's viewing it. That's great. But let's do a scenario where this is the only copy you have, and now someone told you you spelled the word cheat sheet wrong or something, right? Or you got a typo, or the director changed, whatever the case may be. But this is the only original document you have, okay? And now I have to recreate this from scratch. I'm going to pass. I don't want to do that. It's too much time for something that's so minute. I'm actually going to use Google's way of changing it into an editable document. So we know this is a PDF. I don't have Adobe Pro. I can't update it that way. Whatever the case may be, they want a new original document that is editable, okay? So when you open up in a preview mode, you have a drop down. You'll have the option to open up with Google Docs, right? Well, watch what happens. Now, in this case, when I open up with Google Docs, I am now making, in this case, a brand new document. Well, that makes sense, right? Because now I'm creating a brand new document that I need to edit, okay? Again, this is just a little tip or trick. Doesn't mean you have to use this. But a lot of us have maybe Pro that can adjust those documents. But we saw the before. This is the after. How much time have I just saved? Tons, if I had to start from scratch, right? So it pretty much copied everything over. It uses a tool called optical character recognition and allows us to, it will read those characters into text, okay? And sometimes the formatting is kind of horrendous. I'm not going to say it's always this well, but you can use really cool tips. This is why you're going to take the Google Docs training, and you can do like clear formatting, and now you've got the basic text, okay? I'm not going to go over that today, but there's a lot of tips and tricks within that, okay? So now I will have 2 documents Inside my new folder, I have the document version, which is the editable document, and then I have the PDF version. Okay, so now I can make that change, convert it to a PDF, and now I have a new updated document for my boss that wants me to change one word. Okay, the other thing, you can do that with images as well. Many of us take so many pictures. We go to a conference and we take a picture, or we saw an awesome brochure, and whatever the case may be. Here's an example of a picture of my notes for today's training. I notice there's some text here. What happens? Can I convert an image to a Google Doc? I sure can. Let's go this way. You can right click and open with Google Docs. Either way, open with Google Docs, and it's going to convert it. Again, not perfect, but it's going to give you something. It gives you a picture of the image first, so you know what it was before. And then again, not perfect, but again, this is where I just go up here and I select that, and I got a remove formatting. I at least got the content, and I at least have the display of what it looked like before, and so much more. So that's a really nice tip or trick regarding that. If you are a user that falls into the bucket, like I really want to learn more about Office products and how it works with Google Drive for desktop, then I'm going to tell you, attend the meeting training next week, because we will be creating folder infrastructures both in Google Drive for desktop, and how does it work, and what are best practices working with Microsoft Office files when it really needs to be opened with the native app. Or you really love Microsoft Word, but you need to keep it in Google Drive. So we will be talking more about that, Google Drive for desktop and Office files, in the next training. Okay. The next objective is sharing. So we're going to talk about sharing. Objective 3, understanding advanced sharing. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my Google Drive, and I'm going to search for a file. I know it has the word bestie in it. It has the word bestie. This is where, again, you could reduce. You could actually, in this case, notice file type, location, people, so much more. Is it owned by me? Whatever the case may be. Okay. In this case, I'll just go ahead and choose document. And I got a few other ones, it looks like. Okay. So I have one that says share to my bestie. So let me go ahead and open the document up. And now I am making a conscious decision to share it to my bestie. In this case, it's going to be trainer 5. So I am doing actually sharing to a certain person in this case, right? So I'm going to go ahead and hit the big blue share button, because now I've opened the document and I'm looking at it, and I decide, I look to see who already has permission. I'm already trainer 13. That's me today. I'm trainer 13, and trainer 1 already has edit rights to this document. But now I want my other bestie, trainer 5, to have access to this. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and add a certain person up here. And I know this is pretty much what you guys have already done. So again, I'll just go through it pretty fast here. If I can type. All right, now I can make the decision to notify them. I can add a message if I choose to. Again, this is the document that I'm sharing, and what permissions do I want to give trainer 5. Now, the part that you may not realize is the gear. So let's find that gear. That gear up here is for a reason. Gear equals preferences, gear equals settings. As I told you in the slide deck, the default is editors can change permissions and share. So now that I'm giving trainer 5 access, and trainer 1 has access, if I uncheck that, they will not have the capability of sharing this file to anybody else, but they sure can edit this file, okay, and make changes to the file, but they will not have permission. So if I didn't want them to have permission, I would have to uncheck it. And this is where the viewers, commenters can see the option to download, print, or copy. There are times when you don't want them to file, make a copy of this document. Maybe you don't want them to download this document. You want it to be more restrictive. You may want to uncheck it. It's an additional security measure that you choose to turn on or off. Okay. By default, this is your settings. Okay. I'm not going to make changes to that because I'm going to go with the majority 90-10 rule in this case. Most of us do not adjust those settings, but it's important that you're aware of what you're sharing and how you're sharing it. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hit the back button. I'm going to uncheck notify, and I'm going to hit share. So trainer 5 is now going to have edit rights. Okay. Now let's change permissions now. So now let's say I think trainer 1, my other collaborator, has really kind of screwed up this document, and I don't want trainer 1 to have access anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and hit share. But maybe I want her to have access, but maybe I want to give her viewer rights only. Okay, that doesn't mean she doesn't have access to the file anymore. She does have access, but she's not going to be able to edit. I can go ahead and choose viewer. I could give her commenter. I can even remove her if I choose to. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit view, and I'm going to hit save. So now trainer 5 and trainer 13 are the only ones that can edit the document. So in reality, we've all done that, right? You can also, if you had a Google group, such as I have one, ZZZ. So you could do the same thing to a Google group infrastructure. So if I wanted ZZZ group test just as a group that I use for training, all those members of that group would have the same permissions. Okay, so you can do that as well. Okay, that's where you do it at the group level. Okay. What about many friends? Wonder if I want to share it with links. So this time I'm going to use the drop down. I'm going to search for a file that has the word share. So I have a document here that says share to all my friends. Now, if you already know you don't need to look at this document, you could hit the share button here. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do that. I'm going to click the share button here. And you'll notice right now, trainer 13 has edit rights, or is the owner of this file, right? Now, if I wanted to do share with more friends, meaning maybe a link icon, I can actually change the share settings by getting a link. So I can click share with state of Iowa, which is the first default. So I click share with state of Iowa. Now, this is a reminder, what's the criteria? They have to have a Google account and they have to be a state of Iowa Google Workspace user, right? Now let's check out this gear that you probably have never clicked on. You'll notice if you click on the gear, you'll notice the default is unchecked, meaning people in the state of Iowa can search for this file. I recommend that you keep it unchecked unless you really want everybody in the state of Iowa that has a Google account to search for it, okay? So go ahead and click the link back. I'm going to do default, what I think is correct, and I could change to state of anyone with the link access, or I could go anyone with a link. Okay, anyone with a link means that they do not have to have a Google account. So this is one thing that I hope you're still staying on for, because a lot of people don't realize. Wonder if I open this file and I realize, oh my goodness, I want to put this on the website. This would be a great one for the website, right? Or hey, I want to make sure that I did the permissions correctly. A lot of ways you don't know how to test that. How can you test that? Just copy the link that you want to make sure that someone that's outside the state of Iowa, someone for the public, someone that does not have a Google account, can they view this file? Well, to test that, you will go to Chrome, and there's what we call an incognito window. Incognito window is another way of saying a private window. So if you go to the 3 dots in Chrome, you'll have an option to create a new incognito window. You'll notice it gives you exactly what an incognito window means, is that your browsing history is not on, and that whatever cookies that you may have in your own Chrome profile is no longer applied to this particular tab. So if this is anyone with the link access, and I paste that URL in here, this will tell you that this particular test is that I do not have a Google account. I don't. And you can see I have to sign in. I don't have to sign in to view it. I still can see this. So our non-Google Iowa Workforce Development, DHS, should be able to open this document and view it, right? Wonder if I change the permissions and decide to do anyone with the link access and give them edit rights. Remember, we can change links that way, right? Come on. So I could actually change anyone with the link access. Oops. I got click happy, sorry. I can hit change, and I can give anyone editor rights with the link. So now I'm going to update that, hit done. I'm going to go back to my incognito window. As a non-Google user, notice now I can update this as well. I can remove that picture if I choose to. Okay, so you can as a non-Google user. Now, please take caution of anyone with a link access. We don't send that out to everybody. We know who we're sending to. And yes, that URL could be shared out, but it is not searchable in the public, right? It's not indexed, but it is allowed, like if someone shared the link. This is where I like to remind you, if I'm giving someone a link, for example, employee A, that's anyone with a link access, do I have any way of controlling them to forward that on? No. Backtrack. Would I have had any control if they attached a file, like a Word attachment? Do I have any control what they do with it after I distribute it to them? So the answer to both those questions, no. However, if the employee that I sent to did give them anyone with link access and I found out that they did it, could I not restrict it? I could change it, and I could change it to restricted. Now that employee that shouldn't have forwarded that on to KCCI, I at least can restrict it after the fact, right? But after that PDF has been attached and sent to KCCI's server, I have no way of retrieving it, no way of even stopping it, right? I can't really stop it in the sense that it's been shared out, but I could at least restrict the file. It doesn't mean I can't stop them from downloading it and doing anything with it, but at least there is one additional security measure within the Google Docs with anyone with link access, okay? It's still use best judgment. You should know what you're sending. And don't tell me Google did it, you did it, right? You decided to share it as a certain way. That's why knowledge is so important, okay? So important. All right, so now let's just think about the folder infrastructures here just for a second. If now I'm going to be going to go up here and I want to create a folder, because this is very similar to what you're used to. In the past, you would go to File, Save As, make a folder, put it in this particular location. That's the process that you're doing. So I would ask you to do the same thing. You opened this document, you named it, you did all that. Now, I'm ready to put it in a nice infrastructure. You're not going to look for File, Save As, because we don't need to save, but we do need to still put it in a good infrastructure. So think of the folder is your infrastructure icon to remind you, is it in a folder? So click on the folder icon and decide to make a nice folder infrastructure. Since we're talking about friends, let's make a new folder. So I'm going to make a new folder and I'm going to call friends is the name of the folder that I'm making. And I'm going to move share to all my friends and hit move. Okay, why I'm doing this is we're going to understand propagating. We talked about this a little bit before, but we didn't talk about granular and setting permissions that way. Okay. So now I'm going to go back to my drive and I'm going to locate that My Friends folder. So you'll see now it's nested underneath my drive. I see that. I see the Friends folder. I could change the color, adjust it so it stands out a little bit more during training. I can right click and change the color to something bright and vibrant. I'll make it red. All right, so now if I hit the ice cream, let's pull the ice cream because remember that's one of my best tips here. If I click on this friends folder is not shared right now. It's the one that's selected. It's the one I'm looking at. It is not shared. Well, that isn't going to help me when I want to collaborate with other people. Let's click on the document. That is not shared either right now. But now I want to share this folder to to a friend of mine. So I'm going to click on the drop down and I'm going to hit share. And I'm going to share it to trainer 2, another friend of mine. And I'm going to give trainer 2 edit rights. Okay, I want trainer 2 to have access to the entire folder infrastructure. I'm going to go ahead and hit send. Now I'm going to go back and hit share again because I forgot to mention in the folder icon, we do have a different gear. We have the gear editors can change permission and share. Again, the default in the folder area is editors can change permissions and share, which is normally what we want. But again, if you want to restrict it, uncheck it. Okay, maybe it's a sensitive folder and you really just want them to edit the content, but not edit the infrastructure or sharing of it. They can edit the infrastructure, but they can't share it. Okay. So now let's just double check that we know how it propagates down. Notice now if I select the Google Doc, it says trainer 13 and trainer 2 can edit the document. I didn't have to manually do this document, did I? It propagated, it cascaded down. It went all the way through the entire folder from structure, right? If I had more documents, it would do it for all of them or folders that are underneath the friends folder, okay? We kind of already discussed this in the previous training. Now, let's go back and decide to share this with anyone with the link access. I'm going to go ahead and share this document and you want the link access because this one is really important. And I want it out there for other people to have. If I change that to share then the link access, does it change my friends folder? No. Friends is still trainer 13 and myself, but I can set granular permissions and decide this one folder, one file can have a different permission. Now, if you are a shared drive user, that does not apply. That's why it's not even part of this training, okay? So think, well, this will work in shared drive. No, it does not. Shared drive, not shared with me, shared drive, okay? All right, completely different way. But in my drive, you can set granular and restrictive permissions, which is amazing, okay? If I created a new folder inside here and I just call it Friends Are Amazing, notice then Trainer 2 automatically has access to that subfolder that's in Trainer 2. Okay? But notice that one does not have anyone with the link access. Okay? You can change the folder infrastructure as well to anyone with the link access. So I can change it if I choose to anyone with the link access and give them viewer rights. Okay? That means now everything inside this folder has anyone with the link access. Okay? Permissions propagate down. Okay? So this is kind of like your parent A folder. This is your subfolder. This is your document in there, and so much more. Okay? So a lot of like just understanding infrastructure. So think of it that way. Okay? I love the eye. It tells me right away what things are shared with. Okay? Again, sharing is one of those things, like if you have questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. You just still have to be very conscious and deciding on who has access and what. So hopefully that helps you out. We also learned in the previous training, if this was shared to trainer 2, where is this file going to be? And they're shared with me, right? I'm the owner of this one, but in shared with me, that friends folder is going to be in here, right? And they're shared with me. And what should they do? Add a shortcut to their My Drive so they can find it, right? Do you see how this is all coming around in a circle? Alrighty, we are almost done. We got like 15 more minutes and we're almost to the last, we are at the last objective here. Understanding advanced search tips. And this is kind of one of those things like, I don't feel like I need to go over anymore because now we have the search tips. So it's like, oh, so I don't really know if this is going to be worth your time, but we'll try to do a few different ones. Let's find one that is shared with somebody. Okay, and I'm going to do a combination of search tips and search operators in the drop down. So just different ways to do something do a different search, but it's going to be what you'd like to do. I feel that most of you are probably going to navigate to the search chips. Again, that wasn't here not too long ago, so it's just kind of an adjustment for us. So I'm going to search for one with a search operator. I'm going to go ahead and search one with shared with OCIO Training 5. Maybe I'm looking for all documents that have been shared with. Let's try a different, let's do Trainer 1 then. Maybe if I spelled it right, that might help. Shared with colon OCIO Training 5. So these are all the documents that are folders that have been shared with Trainer 5. So maybe someone left a department, maybe Department A, and now they're in Department B, but now they shouldn't have access to Department A stuff. And you know that you've shared these files to that particular person. This would be a great way to do that. And then what you can do is then I could select all these by doing the famous Shift or Control button that we know how to do in File Explorer, right? If I select the first one, hold the Shift button down. Well, there we go. I would select everything in sequential order. Maybe I just want to remove Trainer 5 from this one and this one. That would be the Control button, right? Or this one. Shift and Control, right? So let's just say, for example, this is part of advanced sharing as well. If I want to remove Trainer 5 from both of these, I could right-click on both of these at the same time and do Share. And it might say sometimes varies, like it does here in Trainer 1, but I could remove Trainer 5 from here. Or I think Trainer 5 should only have view rights. So I'm changing the permissions on multiple files by selecting them. How cool is that? So multiple files, you can right-click and choose Share. Okay, so that is a really cool way to do that. So shared with, that's something you can do. And again, the Shift button, so I can hold the first one down, and I can hold and select the top one, and it's going to select everything. Like that's something we've always done in File Explorer. So same concept that you can do inside Chrome Web Interface. So again, another comparison, but important to be aware of. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag this shared with Bestie over to Friends. And why do you think I'm doing that? I'm making a conscious decision to change who has access to that file. Why is it going to change? Because I'm moving it to the Friends folder. Who had access to the Friends folder earlier? Trainer 1, right? And so much more. So if I'm moving it, it's going to change the permissions because we know the Friends folder is going to propagate or cascade down those permissions. And if I'm moving a file that I own over there, it's going to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Move. Let's just see if I'm right. Shared with Bestie. Now look at Trainer 2, Trainer 1, and you want the link access. Did I have to manually do that for all those? No. It automatically changed. Not automatically. I had to make a conscious decision to hit yes, please change permission because I decided to move it. But once I hit moved, it did automatically change those permissions to what it was set in that folder infrastructure. So again, not automatically in the sense of it just automatically changed their permissions. No, you decided to do that. Okay. Let's do another search, another activity. Let's do want to just look at owner is me. Maybe I want to find something that is just owned by me. Notice then the people one has changed in the search chips. It says the people, anything that's owned by Trainer 13, which is me. So these are all the documents that are owned by me. Now let's just think of a folder that's owned by me. Let's narrow it down. Could I choose file type and choose folder. Now these are all the folders that are owned by me. Okay, I could then select last modified. Okay, let's do another one. This one I'm kind of new to. I don't think I'm going to have much in here, but you have a to-do list. Maybe some of you using the approvals or not. We won't talk much about that. But probably many of you have some follow-up items. My coworker, Jolene, uses this all the time because a lot of people comment things for her to approve and they say, please review. She will go in here and look for any suggestions or action items every other day to determine what she needs to do to follow up on. So if you were tagged in a sense of a suggestion or a thing that you were part of, you'd have that. Or maybe you were tagged and asked to do an action item. I don't think I have any in this one. But if you might want to check that out. You might be surprised how many comments and suggestions and action items you have not done. You could do the same thing up here and see that you have follow-up items, any suggestions only, or action items. Okay, so you have some options here. Same thing. You'll notice same concept within Gmail. This is really how the search chips are driven. Same kind of concept, right? So if you like the drop down, it's also going to help you with your search chips. The other one we already talked about in the beginning, Google Drive, but I think it's really important because I go back to the DPH that has a huge infrastructure, but you can always right click on a folder and choose search within that particular folder. Now, I'm very aware the same concept works in File Explorer, but you do need to be aware of, though Google can search more than just the title, right? It searches the entire document, okay? So keep that in mind as well. This is where you might want to select and maybe look for the video that you've been working on, right? And now look at it changed the location in the search chip as well, too, didn't it? So now it's narrowing the search down. Let's just look at the drop down as well. Notice the location here changed. So if you're still having a really big search and you're not sure how to narrow it down, bring the drop down to determine it. Maybe add, oh, I think it was shared with, I don't know, fill in the blank. Maybe it has the word fill in the blank and so much. Maybe it was modified, right? So you do have more options in the drop down as well. And if you always want, you can always learn more and learn some of the other search operators as well. The last one, I'm almost done here, but one of my favorites is a lot of times I don't even go to Drive. I'm looking for a document. This is how I work. I'm looking for a document I'm working on. I work on a document called Communications Update all the time, or Currents Update, something that I'm in all the time. And I'm not how well it's going to work in my shared trainer account, but I'll just start typing the document that I'm looking for. And there it is. Share with all my friends. It's already open, so I might as well hit share, switch to that tab. So you have the capability, if you're logged into a Chrome profile, you do have the capability of finding the document you've recently been in or something that you work in a lot. So there's that Drive cheat sheet that I was typing. So like anything, like I don't know what else will come up here. Let's type in friends. So there's my friends folder that I was creating earlier. I can click on it and go from there. So that alone is like an easy thing because more than likely you're going to the same location you're going to all the time. I'll just go up here and start typing what I'm looking for. And you can look, it gives you the Google search option first, right? And then you have the option of here of the folders, okay? So since I have a few more minutes, I will just point out that you do have the slide deck with a plethora of resources there. We do have the Google Doc script that I went over with today. Feel free to mess with this. You're not going to have the same exact documents, obviously. This isn't hands-on, but it definitely, you could test it out and kind of walk through and just see if you understand this. This is the script that we kind of went over. So just kind of get aware of that. Last thing is the next training is advanced Google Drive training, and we'll be discussing more of Google Drive for desktop. For those that don't know what Google Drive for desktop is, it's where you access your files through File Explorer, and you'll be able to find the same infrastructure that you see under My Drive. I can't emphasize enough that this is a very powerful tool. Don't get me wrong. It's very powerful, but I don't, you know, like, why didn't we just start talking with this? Well, this is where you need to trust me that you still have to understand this portion of Chrome and Google Drive before you understand Google Drive for desktop. The reason is a lot of things that you do not see in Google Drive for desktop that you do see in Chrome. And if you delete a file and you ask me, where is it at? I'm going to kind of say, did you take my training? Because we talk about that kind of stuff because it's got to be only in Chrome. Okay. Because you don't have a trash. You don't have a shared with me in Google Drive for desktop. So that gives you a little sneak peek of the things that we talk about. And we talk more about best practice on how you should use your Microsoft Word apps versus Google Doc editors when you're simultaneously collaborating on a Microsoft Office file. So a lot of information next week for my advanced users, and especially for my users that are using Google Drive for desktop. With that, I hope you guys are having a great day. This recording will be posted on the GoogleHelp-Iowa.gov website on the training page shortly after it's rendered, and with also the slide deck and Google Doc. With that, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to learn more about Google Drive, and I hope to see you next week. Thank you.